Howdy and welcome back to my channel. I'm building out a DIY expedition camper, and after building out this camper from a custom 4x4 chassis, I then went ahead and started building out the interior, and now it's time to go ahead and get this thing painted. As you saw in my last couple of videos, I went ahead and painted this thing. Of course, it started with some different motifs of mountains on the side, and these are some of them right here, and some different colors, and I wanted some different colors. I wasn't really sure exactly which color to go. Hindsight, I probably should have just simplified to 3 colors, but instead I ended up painting it, this is what it looks like, to multiple colors. But just how did I mask out these mountains and make that fairly simple? Well, I'm going to show you in this video. So we're going to dive into it on not only the masking out of these mountains, but making very simple mountains for this DIY expedition camper. And of course, it all started with, well, getting anything prepped and picking the paint. And voila, there it is. Ouch! Hot foil. In my last 2 videos, I went in a little more on the paint I use, which is from Custom Coat, which is a version of Raptor Liner. It goes on very simply. It comes in basically 3 bottles that you just simply mix together, shake up, and then add the tint, which is the 3rd bottle that gets added in there in addition to the hardener to paint itself. And then you simply shake them up and add your spray gun, and it paints on quite easily. You can do this at home with a simple air compressor. And just want to make sure you know, it's my very first paint job on any vehicle. It's still a lot to do, a lot, but I'm gonna tape this off and see what I can do to get these next colors down. Hopefully they'll go better now they've been through my first coat. I'm gonna put a piece of tape down, I think, right now, and try to draw out this mountain on here so I can get the next color just exactly where I need it. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of taping out right now on that. And I think this stuff is all good to be taped on right now. It feels like it's dried really well. It's had about an hour and a half, 2 hours. How am I going to go and mask out the mountain scene that I'm going to paint onto the side of my camper? What I've done is I went ahead and set a digital level meter from basically this corner down here. So I want to go from the inside corner where it's going to be really hard to see any masking air or painting air, and just measure my 60 degrees, because that seems to work out really well, and just try to hold that 60 degrees up through the middle of the windows here. And I'm just going to right now just put it down as tape, and I'm going to hope that I can remove this tape after I paint. I don't know how that's going to work or not. And I'm going to overlap right here, just trying to mimic the same angle as well as possible while I get the digital level meter, try to get my exact 60 degrees and just tape that down. That's going to be a little bit tough to continue that up, but I'm going to give it a shot. And then I got to decide also just how far up here I'm going to go with this mountain. I think I'm going to come just above the windows here and then drop down and keep that same 60 degrees. This will create an outline for the painting of one color versus the other. I don't know if when I paint over this, if I'm going to be able to peel this up okay and have it not tear up the paint. Probably going to depend on how dry it is at that moment. Too dry, probably not good. Dry enough, maybe not dry. Too wet, probably not good either. So I'm going to have to see how that plays out. One thing I want is make sure it's smooth on the painted side here, so that way I don't have like a big bump that's visible between the 2 different colors. But again, it's just to create an outline of it. So when I come in and paint, I know I'm within this space here, and I'll do some masking below. And I'm going to try this out and see if I can peel this off and it's going to work okay. It's going to not tear up the paint. We shall see. I'm not a painter. If I told you guys that I'm not a painter, this is a DIY project. This is my first time ever painting a camper or a vehicle of any kind. So I am sharing what I'm doing from a learning experience, but I'm not sharing what I'm doing necessarily that this is the perfect way or the only way. Undoubtedly, there are going to be other methods to doing this, and certainly professionals or those with lots of experience are going to probably have a better way. This is my way, and I'm sharing how I'm kind of learning this and figuring out as I go here, and hopefully that's helpful to all of you guys out there, whatever project you're doing, painting a car, camper, a mural. I can always go too high with this tape, and then of course I can cut in anywhere else on the other side here, so that way I've got the height that I want. So I'm just going to experiment a little bit here, go a little bit higher than I probably really want or need, but then I can always cut in on the bottom side here. Okay, Ideally, I want to cut in on the other side of this door here so I don't have to mask in two different colors for the door. But if I come in at 60 degrees on the other side of that, I'll actually have to be up like that. 60 seems like a pretty steep mountain. And of course, mountains come in any size, shape, and of course angles. So just pick the angle or shape or size that you want that works well and just go and mask away. Of course, by my using really simple triangles here and fairly consistent triangles, it made it fairly easy to work with and kept for a fairly consistent, uniform silhouette of mountains. And of course, the great thing about this tape is you can always peel it up and you can put it back down and keep trying experimenting. So it's a very easy, cheap way to go and play with it, and then make sure once you get it in there exactly how you want it, go and really press it down hard, and really fill in those little gaps so you don't have any white poking through of the background. And of course, for me, I used a lot of different colors and really probably too many different colors. So this complicated it because I didn't just have to mask for one color. So what I'm doing here, I'm making very basic triangles, and the triangles, the beauty of it is it simulates a mountain and it creates a mountain, but the triangles don't necessarily have to be absolutely perfectly equilateral between each of the two really angles that I'm painting out here with tape. Look at that, within about 2/100ths of a degree. Still a pretty good point there. That works. Time to do the next one. Now this one, I measured on the other side, is 12 inches up from this base here, and it's actually going to overlap this one. And this should be probably around 60 degrees, maybe a little bit more, 63. So if I just bring this in to be the same, I want to be right here. Right where that little white dot is that you probably can't see. That should do it. But let's measure a couple things. Let's see if this is, that's right about 11 up. These two should be roughly 63. Well, interesting enough, that one only came out to be 57. All right, got to come over just a little bit here. Just pivot off that. That should do it. I'm not going to worry about how well this masking tape is placed just yet, and I'll show you why. I'm also not going to worry that there's a little bit of an arc to it because, hey, it's a mountain, right? It's okay, it has a little bit of variation, right? Mountains do. Certainly not perfectly symmetrical, or rarely are. So I'm just trying to get it close. And with this point here, this little peak, that's a little odd to have like a little crater at the peak. This is a little volcano. It's a little chocolate chip of a mountain. I'll make that a little more realistic there, clean this up, peel this away. Now this mountain, I can bring it down, but I'm actually going to stop right here. Even though I'm going to cover all this up, just so I remember when I paint this mountain and this mountain, this one overlaps that mountain. That's it. Let's get going. Let's get this thing covered up. And as you'll see, I start with painter's tape to really create the lines and then go over it with some broader masking. Ideally, my eyes are right at the same level as the tape. Here we go. So I can really get a good visual of that. Got my other roll already ready to go here. Plenty of rolls, have plenty of materials. It's really cheap assurance. You don't have to go run down to the store or try to order some all of a sudden real quickly to fill in for what you need. Speaking of film for a need, look at that. That piece perfectly makes my nice little point here, my pointer boundary. You notice I got the tear at the point at the top intentionally. I'm going to line up the bottom and the top. There's a little bit of waving here with either one of the two lines, the tape and or the painted line. That's okay, I'm just going to adjust it. And ideally I want to minimize paint and minimize overlap of the paint. And so I want to pull this in so it's just on this side of the painted line. There's going to be a hair of an overlap, but I don't want, of course, is a little tiny sliver of white poking through. That's my goal, is to prevent that. Okay, so now I can come over with my big masking tape roll. And I bought some waxed brown paper that already has painter's tape already on it, but it's very thin, it doesn't stick that well, but it does at least help. I wouldn't use it as a primary mechanism. It's why I've got the painter's tape down as the primary to create the lines, but it does at least create the protection from the air paint. Perfect, look at, whoa, look at that, it's gorgeous. And the key here is to cover up the other paint that I already painted to make sure there's no overspray. And when spraying this, the gun generally does have a pretty broad spray pattern, anywhere from a foot to up to 3 feet, and you can get some splatters that come from it. So you want to make sure you cover up the other paint so you don't have any splatters onto the paint you already painted, and then have to go back in and repaint it again. And that's the goal here. But you can see I've got this well protected all the way down so any overspray I have doesn't get in the parts below that I've already painted, right? And including, like, you know, door handles and the L-track down the side for the awning mount. And then this plastic draped over here, because I already have these 2 colors painted on here. And I don't want to, well, really I have 4 colors. I have a color here, this big color, this color, and that color. I want to make sure I don't overspray them. So this whole entire rest of this is going to be painted one color, except for these 2 mountain blockouts, which I will come back in and paint those afterwards. So I'm going to paint call it the blue of the skyscraper. And one really key tip here, you can see how I cut it in right at that inside corner underneath the overhang here. I did the same thing as well in another spot, and then also I cut in this tape here right where this dimple is in the actual factory sheet metal. So that way it's really hard to tell any, call it, you know, imperfection there between the 2 different colors of paint. And then finish painting out the 2 additional mountains after that dries, and so that way I can mask over and get it dried, and then I'll come back over and just do any little bit of cleanups I have to do, like with a roller or a brush. I do have to do. And of course, here's the finished product, which you may have already seen. You'll see how I make that cutout right in the inside corners there, so it really hides the difference or change between those 2 different colors. And also I got a lot of different colors here, but it does create a nice mountainscape, and it all worked out pretty well, and so I'm pretty happy about that. Partly also why I use these gray tones is so that way it doesn't get really mixed for being a military vehicle, and it kind of blends with any environment and looks nice and clean and neat. And now coming up, electrically operated large cargo garage doors, and why I went ahead and made them electric instead of just manual. And I'll go into describing that, and you'll probably notice a little tip of that when you look at these pictures here, with no door handles going to open these. So it's really kind of cool and interesting. So thanks for watching, subscribing, and certainly sharing with others. I look forward to my next videos coming up.